Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Lee Kaplan, he is on the phone. He's an extraordinary attorney with a firm that's really an interesting one. Why don't you tell us a little bit about SKV to get us started? And as always, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you. Sure, it's Miser, Kaplan, and Veselka, skv.com. And we handle a full range of civil litigation, plus white-collar criminal matters, such as the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, or examples where the United States government thinks somebody has violated the securities laws, things like that.
Yeah.
And we basically prepare for trial and go to trial unless clients at some point along the way take a different approach. But I think it's important for litigation firms to really understand the value of going to trial, because when you tell the other side you're going to trial, it tends to make them think a little bit and look at their poker hand as to what they really want to do about a business dispute.
Yeah, absolutely. And more and more things get resolved outside of the courtroom, and I think that's because of opportunity costs in economics. But I think a lot of it also has to do with the muscle that's coming behind that firm. And let's face it, your firm has a pretty solid reputation out there.
Well, thank you. We've been pretty fortunate, and the people who have joined us in the last few years, both young lawyers and some laterals who mainly are concentrating on white-collar criminal matters, are really extraordinary lawyers. We are now 20 lawyers, and we're pretty busy, I'm happy to say, but you're right. Litigation costs money, and it's important that you gear yourself up to handle that as efficiently as possible. Most of our cases we try to handle with 2 lawyers. There are cases that justify more lawyers, and we do that when it's required. But we try not to have unnecessary flapping around on a case. We have 2 people usually who know, and a legal assistant, who know the case, answer the phone, take care of everything, and are ready to make things happen at a moment's notice.
Yeah, that's crucial. So what's happening out there in the legal front that you've been watching?
Well, the 2 things that have been in the paper the most are the Supreme Court decision on this thing that's relatively obscure about whether or not a family can claim that someone was born in Israel when they were born in Jerusalem on their passport. That's probably of not any real interest to people here. And then this release of Alfred Brown after many, many years in prison for a murder which he apparently was at least wrongfully convicted of. And
yeah, that was
wrongful,
what?
I mean,
was it like 4.5 decades?
It wasn't that long, but his alibi was that he wasn't there, and in fact, he was at his girlfriend's home, and he had called her from there. And apparently, the phone records were never turned over to the defendant. The police did, in fact, have the telephone records that showed that call was made. Now, you could always argue somebody else made the call and there's some other circumstances, but because the prosecution has a duty to turn over exculpatory evidence to the defendant, and that wasn't done, the DA's office properly in 2013 turned that over at the time. Of course, then there was a lot of argument about whether or not he even deserved a new trial, and he's waited months for this day, even after this information came out. And it is pretty disgraceful that back at the time this evidence wasn't turned over.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know the story about that. I'm assuming the person who had it in his garage was retired, and so there's no job action that can be taken against that person. But I'm certainly glad that at long last some portion of justice has been done for somebody who spent all that time on death row.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way,
shocking.
I got that confused with another case. I'll have to look it up. There was another case this week where someone was a case was overturned after 45 years, which is like, wow, that's unbelievable. This one was from 2003.
This is the one that
2003 is when this one happened.
Right.
So tell me,
it's just it's very unfortunate, but people, and this is just human failings. Our criminal justice system is no different from any other enterprise. When you have human beings doing things, human failings, and the temptation to do anything to get a victory, or to make, to get a bid and be successful and get a contract, those kinds of things overtake people, and we always have to be wary of that. And here's a guy who went to death row in 2005. 2 people were killed, both an officer whose gun jammed when he was trying to respond to this robbery, and a store clerk. They're both killed. I mean, it's really terrible. But this guy has been on death row for 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
And
he was a young guy because he's a young guy now. So, I mean, whenever this transpired, that's a pretty tragic way to spend some crucial years in one's life. And we still keep hearing about these stories. And I got to tell you, my political inklings is that I'm a conservative, who's becoming increasingly libertarian over time. And as a result, I used to be pro-death penalty, and now it doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense because of, the possibility of human error that you talked about. And, to me, keeping someone off the street just and now in Nebraska, one of the more conservative states in the union, they have now overturned the death penalty. I thought that was a telling story as well.
Well, and I think, obviously I can't get in the mind of other people, but I believe that the doubts about the death penalty are not whether the concept is right or wrong, but whether or not there are wrongful convictions.
Yeah.
We do not want to execute people who are innocent. We can't do that. And if you're a true conservative, you're going to feel that way just as you would if you're a true liberal, regardless of whether you think it's okay to execute people who really did murder somebody.
Lee Kaplan, as always, does a great job, and you can learn more about him at his website, skv.com. And Smizer, Kaplan, and Veselka, as always, loved it. At one point, though, I do want to have a little bit of conversation. In fact, there was a great article by AJC about what happened with that passport situation. I thought it was interesting, and there's a story coming up in USDailyReview.com about that as well. So, but always great insights. Thank you, sir.
Great. Look forward to talking to you next time.
You bet. All right, when we come back, much more for you. You want to remind you best content here can be found over there at USDailyReview.com, and it is the price of business.